If you tuned in a couple episodes ago, we broke down gold, why it matters in today's rapidly changing world, and what that could mean for the future of your money. So naturally, we had to follow up with silver, especially now that it's hitting all-time highs. There's a link to the gold episode in the show notes. Today, we're talking about how silver went from being one of the most trusted forms of money in history to something that sat on the sidelines for decades. But that silence ended recently. While the savvy investors started quietly buying about 2 years ago, the Wall Street giants really only rushed in about 6 months ago. We'll get into why that changed, why the crowd is finally showing up, and whether silver deserves a spot in your portfolio or just something you should know and understand. This isn't a sexy topic, but if you're serious about understanding the future of money, it's not a piece of the puzzle you'll want to skip. My name's Gökçe. I'm an entrepreneur and investor, and I'm here to help you get good with money as long as you have a plan. For thousands of years, silver wasn't some niche investment. It was real money, and entire civilizations ran on silver coins. In China, silver served as the backbone of the economy well into the 1930s. And in the United States, we use silver in everyday coins for over 170 years, right up until 1964. Which means your grandparents could have bought groceries or filled up their gas tank using coins made with actual silver. Even the Roman Empire used silver coins as everyday currency. So it wasn't exotic or something only for collectors. It was normal and used the same way we use dollars today. As the world modernized, though, the role of silver changed. Given that it's the best natural conductor of electricity, people started realizing its usefulness. By the early 1900s, it was already showing up in medicine, photography, and wiring. By the time the 1960s rolled around, silver was too valuable to keep using in coins. It was needed in industries that were building on the future with things like electronics and eventually solar panels and EVs. With increasing industrial use, though, silver's price started to move in ways that were harder to predict, and that volatility made it less reliable as a form of money. So governments moved away from using silver in their monetary systems altogether since they needed and wanted stability, not surprises. We went from using silver in coins to needing it for the very survival of our modern industry. And when you combine that explosive need with a limited supply, you don't get stability. You potentially get a rocket ship of an investment. On December 5th, 2025, silver finally crossed a major milestone, shooting to nearly $60 an ounce and breaking its old 1980 high of around $50. You heard that right, 1980. This comes down to three things. First, the lack of supply relative to demand. For 5 years in a row, the world has officially used more silver than miners could dig out of the ground. We're running a huge deficit, about 800 million ounces missing from the market in just the last few years. To put that into perspective, that's like trying to bake cookies for the entire neighborhood, but running out of flour halfway through. We're using it faster than we can find it, and there is no backup pantry. Second, the government designation. In 2025, the U.S. government officially added silver to its critical minerals list. This is a designation reserved for materials essential to national security. In plain English, the government admitted we need this to survive. And that's because you can't build a missile guidance system, a military satellite, or a night vision goggle without silver. Third, the value gap. Silver has always been known to be poor man's gold, or the affordable haven relative to gold. For most of the last 100 years, you needed about 40 to 60 ounces of silver to buy just 1 ounce of gold. That was the normal price difference. But today, the ratio is around 70 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold. Think of it like 2 houses on the same street. Typically, the big mansion costs about 50 times more than the cozy cottage next door. That's the normal gap. But today, that mansion is listed for 70 times more the cottage. If you saw that listing, you wouldn't think the mansion is special. You'd think the cottage is priced low, and that's exactly what is happening with silver right now. It looks like the cheapest house on the block, and that potentially gives it room to grow. So how should you approach silver as an investment? And if you decide to jump in, how do you actually buy it? The first way is the OG way, also known as the insurance play. This is for the person who needs to hold their protection and not just see numbers on a screen. You buy real government minted coins like American silver eagles or Canadian maples, and you don't trade them. You hold them so that if the banking system freezes or the internet goes down, you still own something that has value. It takes up space and you can't spend it at the grocery store, but it offers total control and peace of mind in a potentially chaotic world. If you want to skip the safes and storage, there's always the convenience play through your brokerage account. The most convenient way to buy silver is through ETFs. They track the price of silver, but keep in mind with ETFs, you don't actually own the metal. You're trusting someone else to hold it. It gives you easy access to the price movements and hopefully profits, but it doesn't give you the security of holding the real thing in your hand. The two biggest names you'll see are the iShares Silver Trust, ticker SLV, and the Sprott Physical Silver Trust, ticker PSLV. Most traders prefer SLV because it's massive and easy to buy or sell in seconds. However, purists often stick with PSLV because it holds fully allocated bars in a Canadian government vault. And while their yearly fees are nearly identical, the real difference is usually at tax time. So do your research and consult with a tax expert before you commit to buying one. There are also indirect ways to invest in silver. Let's call this the business bet. You aren't buying the metal itself, you're buying the machines and the people digging it up. Keep in mind with this type of investment, you're taking on business risk. Business risk doesn't just mean huge disasters, it means everyday headaches that can ruin a company over time. Examples of this are fuel costs doubling overnight, labor unions going on strike, or government suddenly changing the tax rules. Even simple bad management can eventually wipe a company out. Take Arcana Silver, for example. They didn't have a massive earthquake or a flood. They owned a mine in Colorado that was sitting on millions of ounces of silver, but the management team miscalculated the costs and took on too much debt. They ran out of cash, couldn't pay their lenders, and lost the entire mine. The price of silver was doing just fine, but the company went to zero. So that's the risk. You could be right about the metal, but wrong about the manager. Finally, there is a distinct strategy called streaming. Think of these companies as the bankers of the silver world. They don't dig holes, they don't drive trucks, and they don't get their hands dirty. Instead, they simply write checks. A streaming company like the industry giant Wheaton Precious Metals gives a miner the cash they need to build a mine, and in exchange, they get the right to buy a chunk of the silver for cheap forever. They might pay $5 an ounce while the rest of the world pays $60. They pocket the difference, avoiding most of the operational risks that direct mining companies have. Keep in mind that even the banker, though, has to worry about who they lend money to. This is called counterparty risk. If the mining company goes bankrupt or the government shuts them down, the stream of silver dries up instantly. Whether you're looking at streamers, miners, ETFs, or just the coins themselves, silver is not a set it and forget it play. It's very volatile, and when the market panics, it often swings harder than gold. That is why most financial experts recommend keeping your total investment in precious metals small, usually between 5 and 10% of your portfolio, with silver being just one slice of that mix. Think of it as the spice in the recipe and not the main course. But even as a smaller player in your portfolio, silver has evolved, and it's one of the metals now powering the modern world. Whether you buy it or not, understanding silver tells you a lot about where our world is headed, because it sits right at the intersection of old money and new technology. And that awareness is key, because real confidence comes from being prepared to adjust when the world starts to change. If you found this episode useful, please share it. Until next time,